Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar, Tips for Recruiting Volunteers. And your presenters today are Tarun, Kaur
and Cecily Michaels. This webinar is part of a three-part series. That this webinar is titled Recruiting Volunteers, but mainly our examples are going to be around recruiting digital mentors, and that's because it's the Be Connected program, which is about establishing digital mentoring programs. So the Be Connected program. If you don't know about this program, it has been going now since about October last year, and it's for a federally funded initiative for people 50 years and older, so that includes me. And it is about ensuring that older Australians have the skills and confidence to be online safely. Now, Good Things Foundation is a UK-based organisation that is also now registered in Australia, and they have the contract to set up the network, which is the 2,000 digital mentoring programs across Australia.
And before we get into how we recruit volunteers, I would love to know why you think people volunteer. So again, in the question bar, if you could let us know why you think
bombard us with all the reasons why you think people volunteer. So we've got some samples of why we think, but we're waiting for you to tell us more because we haven't got more.
Yeah, so there are a range of reasons why people volunteer, and we've got the samples there. So while we're waiting for you, Cecily, would you like to share why you volunteer?
Oh, I do it for many reasons. Mainly, I just love the reward I get for choosing to do something when no one can say, well, you're only going to be paid $25 an hour for that, or $14 an hour for that, or $50 an hour for that. I get to choose my own reward based on the satisfaction I get out of the role. And being a digital mentor for me is a three-way win, because I get that satisfaction. Then I get the satisfaction of seeing someone who thought they could not do anything suddenly know how to do something as basic as texting on their mobiles. We often get some basic things like that, but they are so excited because now they now can communicate with their family or whatever, the world. And the third one is the surprise one for me, is I often get to learn things I didn't even know I could do. Like if you gave me an Android phone, I would go, oh, I don't know what to do. But when people ask me a specific question, I either Google it or I find another volunteer and they teach me, and then I teach the learner. So anyway, I just love the whole experience, besides also the amazing people you meet and the connections with people. But we have some more responses, so let's share them.
So Paula says she wants to give back, and volunteers want to give back and support the community. Yep, that's one.
Christine is also talking about giving back to the community.
Yeah.
And Bronwyn has talked about experience, make friends, practice. When someone writes in one, we jump.
It goes up.
Their skills, give back. Yes, all consistent. In our case, they are either cancer survivors wanting to give back or just want to help the cause. My God, anyone who survives cancer, I can see why you'd give it back. When I go to the cancer clinic with my dad, I just tell him every time, I do not want cancer. I think anyone who survives that is a amazing hero, you know. To build the community and to build job skills, absolutely. Often to get involved with interesting projects, Stephen says. And Oslin says, get some more experience in a field they would like to work in, satisfaction of giving back. And also retirees like to spend their time doing something worthwhile. Totally. You read Leanne's, please.
And pay it forward. A fair amount of our
legacies.
Volunteers were helped by Legacy when they were children. Okay, so they got help and they want to give back in the future. So.
Look, what amazing responses. You are all completely, like, you know all that, so you know, you may as well say goodbye now. But hopefully, even though they're all correct, the main reason why people volunteer. Now, I wish I could say I invented this reason, but I want to share how I learned this. I was at a volunteer managers training with Dr. Judy Esmond from Western Australia University, and if you've ever had an experience to see her talk, she is so worth it. So she had about 100 volunteer managers in the room, asked us the same questions we asked you. We all gave the same responses. There were just just went on and on. And when we exhausted all of those, she says, the main reason why people volunteer is because, let me click my button, they're asked. And it's like, yeah, duh, it's not rocket science, but really when you think about it, it's the asking that gets people to volunteer. It's either, we'll go into all the different ways that you can ask through this webinar, but I just want to give one example now. We put out an ad asking people to volunteer for digital mentoring in the Springwood area, and we got no responses. So I went up to an event on a weekend, a farmer's market, and I took another volunteer with me, and I simply asked people on the street, are you working? Are you studying? I chose a young demographic, and when I got those sort of responses, I could sort of gauge if they were interested in talking further and if they even would have time. And I just said, look, we're here trying to find people who would be willing just to help the people that don't know anything about technology, don't have the app fires near me, which is what you need if you live in a fire-prone area like the Blue Mountains. And they all immediately said, yes, we'd love to be involved in that. And they saw it as, like solving a problem. But they weren't people that were looking to volunteer. So I just found that a really recent, interesting experience.
Yeah.
Tarun, how do you feel about asking people to volunteer?
So I actually love asking people to volunteer, and the reason for that is because I see the value that it adds to people's lives, and I know it's something, a gift that you give to people's lives. Because when I started volunteering, it was when I decided what I wanted to do with my career. It helped me get my passions and everything that I wanted to do in life. So I don't have any hesitation with asking people to volunteer. And well, I go out to different community events at LEAP. So there are a few different ways that I would like to share with you how I ask people. So depending on someone's interest level, I would ask them differently. So when I get the impression that people are busy or look uninterested, I approach them by asking something like, can I quickly let you know a little bit about what we do? And this way, it won't take long, and people are often happy to hear me out. And then I'll give them a flyer. But I also say, just if you want to leave your details, I can call you a little bit later, and so they have more time then. And this is a good way. But if people look interested or come up to you, then I just directly ask them, have you ever thought about volunteering? And then I talk about the role a little bit more. So, and I get quite a good response from both methods.
Yeah, so we've got a poll where we want to find out, this is just you click one of those numbers, how you're currently finding your recruitment processes, just so we've got a sense in this group of where you're all at. But start thinking about and writing in the question bar how you feel about asking people to volunteer, because that will take you 2 seconds. That's a very interesting result. There's about 2 or 3 of you that find it quite, you're feeling quite successful at it, which is great. And it could be because of the context you're in. You've got an easy pool of volunteers to recruit from. And then others are finding it a little bit more difficult, which is probably why you're here. And the ones in the middle are either way. So that just gives us a handy understanding of where you're all at. But start telling us in your question here how you feel about asking people to volunteer. So when you ask people to volunteer, they get as much out of giving as in my experience, I do, then my time, then I'm confusing myself because I'm ad-libbing. But what I want to say is that as an organisation at LEAP, we bring volunteers in here, but I see it as much as we benefit from the roles that they fulfil for us, they benefit from the experience of being able to use their intelligence, their skills, their knowledge, their engaging with this amazing group of people at LEAP, the people they meet through the volunteering, if it's the learners in the lab. So, it's a win-win for everyone. It's not, we're not asking people just to do something for us because we want to take advantage of them. It's got to be both ways, and we're there to support them too in what they want to get out of their goal for volunteering. So that's something we talk a lot more about in the Harnessing Volunteer Motivation. We have a lot of responses. Thank you all. So let's have a look, please. Are you any good at reading that, Tarun, or shall I do it for you?
Yeah. I'll be asking people to volunteer at an upcoming expo. Okay, great. Somebody's saying, I don't find it difficult. I believe in our program wholeheartedly, and so find it easy to communicate. I think that's the key.
That is totally the key.
That's totally key. If you believe in what your program's doing, that's why I find it so easy to ask.
So it's new for me.
Okay.
I am currently putting together a package of the types of volunteering opportunities and training provided. That's Leanne. Melissa from, I keep wanting to say you're from Mackay, but that's your surname. I'm happy to ask people to volunteer, but our volunteers have specific training in Cancer Council services, and we do get quite a few uni students who may just need to tick a box and who are difficult to manage because they don't tend to stick around. That is a factor of the 21st century, and I think we've just got to be more clever in the way we set up volunteer programs so we get them to train their replacements, you know, before they move on. But, you know, you've got to weigh up the cost-benefit analysis, I think, of having the time invested in volunteers as opposed to how long they stay. And it's got to be a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. And we have the same problem with uni students. Yeah. So Oslin said that. So I think Cecily was saying that is the part of the day and age here. So
thank you for all those contributions. If anyone wants to share anything more, I'm just going to hide this poll now. I should have done that earlier so you didn't have to keep looking at that screen. So we're going to go into now the ways of volunteering. So this is just the overview of everything we're going to cover through this webinar.
Yeah. And the general categories we'll be unpacking today are online, events, word of mouth, and print. So each has multiple ways we can use them, and we're delving into this a little bit later. And before we do this, there's just one more poll we'd like you to complete. So is that
which methods do you use?
Yeah.
Let us know. Again, we'll get a census in the group of all your current methods, and
you can choose more than one.
And if you use other methods, tell us what they are in the comments again in the question bar. We have 100% using word of mouth. Wow.
Okay.
83% online, 67% through events, and half of you through print, and none of you using other at this stage. Maybe you will be when you think about the things we share. They might prompt your memory. Okay, I'm going to hide that now and go back to the slides. Okay, let's look at
the case study. Yeah.
This is, we use a CIBI CRM data, I've said that very fast, didn't I? A CIBI CRM, which is something,
customer relationship management program. It's a bit of a mouthful.
And it's an open source, but if you want to customize it to your needs, you need to pay a developer to do it, which is what we've done with our CIBI. But that means we can capture how do people find us and pull up graphs like this. So for our Leaping Lab, which I was saying right at the beginning is on our premises where we walk the talk of what we promote in the community. This is how we, of the volunteers we've recruited there, this is how we found them. Now, whilst that 70% came through online, which would say, well, why don't you just use online? It's the other 3% that can be your more long-term volunteers and more committed and contribute the most. So they really are worth the effort, and we'll go into more details about how we got those through word of mouth or through events later.
And so the results. And when we've been recruiting for digital mentors for programs in Western Sydney, we have had to use a variety of strategies, and we couldn't just rely on online methods. The reason for this is because not all potential volunteers are online, and not everybody's actively seeking a role. And so from my experience promoting volunteering in the community, a lot of people want to volunteer, but they're not actively seeking a role. So this is, again, a reason why I believe it's so important to ask them and use different methods.
Which is like what I gave in that example about up at Springwood.
Exactly, yeah. But we don't want to discount online recruitment. We know that's a very valuable tool. So we just want to make sure you all know how to use this. So this is our Go Volunteer website. Sorry, not our, the Go Volunteer website. And you can just register for free on that website, and you can just start posting ads for free on there. And I just want to give you a bit of an example of what we've used in the past and what's worked. And the example I'll be giving you is Digital Mentor. So the title, Digital Mentor, works perfectly fine. So we've got a good response for that. And when writing the text for advertisements, we see the greatest response when we tap into the internal motivations of volunteers. So writing something that will tap into that is always great. And I'll give you a little example of our text soon, and right now actually. And so I'll just read that out to you, what we used in our text. Are you passionate about social justice? Do you want to support people learn a life skill which will reduce their isolation and loneliness? Then share your digital skills as a digital mentor. Using keywords such as social justice, life skills, and reducing isolation and loneliness will pull at heartstrings and draw on the core motivations of digital mentor volunteers. And any volunteers. So you've got to get down to what is their core motivation.
So other online methods could be using social media. Now, as you can see from this example, I didn't have any luck on this particular Facebook post. So we are still, and we will share this information when we get some data. So we're looking into paying for Facebook ads to promote volunteer roles, recruitment, I should say, really, not just the role. But as a free method, I'd posted a role in the community social pages for the Blue Mountains, and it led to this, exchange on the right there. But as you can see, often people fear that they don't have the technology skills required to be a digital mentor, and so they're reluctant to put up their hands. But yes, that I do believe that social media is one of the future ways of recruiting volunteers, and the way the government is withdrawing the funding for volunteer management services, that could be what services are going to be having to invest in the future.
Yeah. And I did learn a little bit more about Facebook ads, and I think they would work very well because they actually pull together someone's interests, and it's a very good specific method to.
We have an intern here at the moment who he is researching this for us. So we'll be sharing all our learnings in another webinar when we know more. But one of our most popular ways of promoting volunteering is at an event, or we either create an event or we attend another event. And Stephen, you said you're going to be at an expo soon, and you're going to be recruiting volunteers at that. Yes, you totally get what we're talking about. This was a NAIDOC week in Penrith, and the people that came to it were from such a huge geographical spread, yes. Yeah. And it didn't matter how many staff we had there at one time, we were all really busy the whole time talking to people. And I happened to be talking to a woman who came from the Blue Mountains. I knew she came from the suburb where we were setting up a digital mentoring program. I told her about the role. She said she'd love to do it, and she signed up, and she was fabulous there. But also, Chris is another case that we could share with you on the right. He was at a disability expo finding out about services. His sister was pushing him around a wheelchair because he can't walk long distances. There's only like 10 other people with his disability in Australia. And he was like 35 when I met him, and he was a full-time gamer. That's all he did with his life because of his special needs. He finds it difficult to leave the home without a carer, and there isn't that service provided through any disability service. So anyway, I asked him if he needed to have help learning about technology, and he told me, no, I don't. I'm very good, actually. I went, oh my God, could you be a volunteer? And he said, oh, I guess so. I help my mum all the time. And he was. I put it down to him having the initiative, because he even found our website, guessed at spelling my name, before our team got onto him to follow up with my, putting in that he was interested. And he couldn't wait to start. He's never left. He's now like here daily doing jobs. And we are investing in him. He's doing a training and assessment for Cert 4, and he does share co-hosting the Being a Digital Mentor webinar with Hamali, our colleague. And he has taken over the facilitation of the lab, which is the title we give for that position. But yeah, he's incredible, such an asset. We just adore him.
He's amazing, and everybody loves him. Everybody wants to get mentored by Chris.
Yes.
So that shows the value of going to an event, even though it might cost you in staff wages to be there on a weekend. You do get quite a lot out of it, even if it's a few volunteers you get. So
well, you find the people that are really, because you're having that conversation face to face, you're able to really, most often the people you recruit at an event are the ones that will convert into a volunteer. The ones that just sort of like respond to something in a whim, and then we come back to them like, oh, I can't do it now.
Yeah.
Whatever. So that's where I do think there is a cost benefit to giving up your time on the weekend to recruit volunteers if they're going to actually make your life a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, so that's worth it. And so we might move on to word of mouth, and we do find that works well. And there's a few different methods that you can use this. So if you're speaking with interested or current volunteers, it's a really good idea just to ask them, do you know any friends or families who would like to volunteer with them? And I have done this quite a lot and get a good response from that. Or another example could be if you're holding a volunteer recognition event, you could ask your volunteers to bring a friend or relative along, and then ask the current volunteers to share stories, because stories are what really pull at heartstrings and motivate other people and inspire them to volunteer. And
tell us about Elizabeth.
Yeah,
that's what you're going to say.
Yeah, that's right.
So Elizabeth on the left. Elizabeth.
She's so amazing.
So in this picture, you can see the woman on the left. That's Elizabeth. She was in a coffee shop, and I'd stopped in there this morning because I had some really urgent emails, and I didn't want to get to the office, and we have an open plan office, and I sit with all the team, and I didn't want to be distracted by people needing my time without getting these jobs done. So I called in, and as I was working away, I noticed a woman beside me texting, and I thought she could be a digital mentor, and I had this urge to ask her to volunteer. And I said to myself, Cecily, leave her alone. She's in a coffee shop. She deserves to have her, not be disturbed. But the urge just wouldn't leave me. So I leant over and I said, excuse me, could I talk to you? And explained what I wanted to ask her. And she said, like tears nearly welling up in her eyes, I cannot believe you are asking me this, because I woke up this morning thinking I have to get a volunteer role. Mm-hmm. The other picture is about different examples of word of mouth. The first one was really easy. Samantha with the hat on, she was my student and music student, and she loves to perform, and we needed someone to accompany our roller coaster flash mob, which Tarun, for her sins, is responsible for organising, and it required a massive amount of labour time, but it was a great opportunity to bring in one-off volunteers. And so the morning that we're doing the working bee, I was at Park Run, and the woman on the right, she's a volunteer at Park Run, where you run 5Ks or walk 5Ks. And I mentioned to her that we were doing this, and she said, oh, I'd love to do that. And she brought 2 of her friends. So we had all this labour power. And Jock in the middle, he had already applied for the role online, but when we did the roller coaster flash mob, we talked about the other volunteer roles that we had, and one of them was a digital mentoring role in that area where he lived, and he signed up for that. So that's just how you can use word of mouth to extend your volunteers. And so sometimes you don't think to ask them, but when you do, they have permission then to actually say to their friends, oh, look, they're looking for more. Are you interested? Which they mightn't think to do otherwise.
Exactly. Then you get multiple advocates for your role. So we think that a flyer advertising a role is useful when you're operating in a defined community. And here's a sample of the type of flyer we use to recruit digital mentors on the left. And there's also a copy in your resource pack. When using flyers, it's important to consider the wording. And often we see ads saying, volunteers needed, please help. But we don't believe this inspires volunteers. It's more engaging to use active words, such as in the ad that we have there. For example, be the solution to get people out and about. Words such as support instead of help work better to attract people. And it's important to think of your ad like you would be for an advertising position, advertising for a paid position, because it is a gift that you're giving them. It's not just asking for help.
But you want stars to be working in your organisation, and you want volunteers to be stars too. So, you've got to make it sound like this is the role for you, to attract stars.
Exactly, and it is an opportunity, not like, please give us your time or something like that, And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the layout of the ad. It's also important if you want to make an impact. And you can make a flyer look really professional using free programs such as Canva.
Which, can we say, we didn't use for these two. We did them on Publisher, didn't we?
No, not Publisher.
Was it Illustrator?
You
did that one on Publisher, I thought?
No, it was through InDesign.
Oh, InDesign, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, this one was done as a PDF. That's all, just converted into PDF. So we're in PDF, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think that one was.
But we have used Canva for other things, and so we just want to let you know in case you feel you don't have any skills or programs.
And so you can use that one, and it's the website's on the bottom, so www.canva.com. And for images, so you might not have images available, but I do recommend just taking pictures of your current volunteers in action, even if it's just with your smartphone, because it doesn't need to be from a professional photographer. And the reason I'm saying this, I think an authentic image, like your current volunteers, is much more engaging than just using a stock photograph. And Cecily, you've mentioned that you've used print media before, and did you want to talk about that?
No. I'm joking.
The MP letters.
I'm joking. No, I was going to talk about the fact that I set up the volunteer program here at Leap, and it was initially it was just to support all the services that work with the frail age and people with disability, and so it was social support, community transport, and Meals on Wheels, really. Anyway, the Blacktown Advocate somehow must have picked up one of my flyers somewhere, and they put an ad in the Blacktown in the community announcements, and I didn't know anything about it, and I was getting all these calls from people who were responding to my ad, and I said, where's the ad?
What did I do?
Because I always ask, how did you find out about us too? And yes, they ran that ad. The whole time they ran that ad, I would get this trickle of calls, which I just think is fascinating. That I'm not fascinating. It just proves that it does work. But the other thing I thought, well, how can I get another free advertising? Because the Blacktown Advocate actually stopped having community announcements. That was a bummer. And anyway, I thought of MP newsletters because I get them in my letterbox. And so I approached all the MPs in my area that I was responsible for promoting volunteering. And one of them had a newsletter, was willing to do it. And the day that those newsletters hit their letterboxes, I had 3 calls on that day, all people ringing to say they want to volunteer. So other methods. I just thought I'd share a couple of other things. Now, if you haven't got an event planned, and you have a shopping centre in your area, and if it's the right type of shopping centre, because I have done it in one and it was a disaster. Parramatta is not the place to promote anything, I'm convinced. But this was in Blacktown. I got the services in the area and some of the volunteers of those services to roster on with me. I got a magazine publisher who, I don't know, they had like at least 10 different types of magazines. I just contacted them and said, it's National Volunteer Week. I want to promote volunteering. Would you be willing to donate some of your magazines? How many do you need? Oh, about 300, no problem. I just had to pick them up. That would be a problem if you don't live in a metropolitan area. But anyway, I would make up then a little show bag with that fridge magnet that you can see there. That was a message that we used initially in the first day, and we were a tri-community exchange then. I would just say, would you like a shopping list for your fridge? And that was my way of starting a conversation with people. And 9 times out of 10, people would say yes. I could then gauge by them looking at that message if they might want a conversation. I'd say, well, are you interested in volunteering? And would you like to know more about it? And then what you want to do is get their name and number so that you can follow up with them. Because when we say it's all about asking, it mightn't be the first time you ask them or the second time, it might be the 3rd time. And this is not about that horrible sales mentality or even fundraising mentality where you're constantly being asked. It's about respectful asking. So if they sign up, give you and then you ring them and say, no, we're not interested because something's changed in their life, then you say, would you be interested in, would it be okay then if I call back in and gauge, from what they've said, 3 months, 6 months, and next year, and then make a note in your calendars or, you know, reminders to follow up. Don't forget to follow up, because apparently in sales, they've looked at this, you know, that it is about asking that you will get that result.
And there's been times I've scheduled, even call them in a year, and they've actually responded, I have some time now. So it is worth it. And so if you don't have enough raw resources to maybe create this fridge magnet, you can also do something simple like print out something interesting that you can talk to people with and be like the point of interest. So for example, I print off those mindfulness drawing stencils you might have seen around, which people use to just colour in, and for adults and children. So I use that as a drawing. So do you want this for free? And then, you know, just do you want to know a little bit more about what we do? And then
there's so many ways that you can find people to ask. You do it at TAFE, don't you, Tarun?
Yeah, so I do it at TAFE. And the way that I do it at TAFE is, especially when I'm trying to target a promotion, so we know specifically what role we're looking for. So I just gave the local TAFE a call, or a community college. So depending on if you have one in your area, and basically just ran an information session, letting people know what's good about volunteering and what will be required. And last time I held this information session, I actually got 27 volunteers. So there was about 30 or 40 people in the class, and 27 people actually wanted to volunteer. So that's a really good way to get different age groups volunteering as well.
So we want to know, your turn.
That's all right. So there are organisations funded to support you, including your peak body in each state, as well as volunteer resource centres, if you're lucky enough to have one. And we just wanted to know how many of you have access to a volunteer resource centre or a peak organisation. So in that poll.
Yes, we've got 43, 57, 71, that must be 86. Oh my God, you're all doing so well.
That's great.
I'm going to share that. So there's only a few of you that haven't access. So we know that Nepean therapy dogs have, because they're one of ours that we support. So I'm just going to hide this now, and I'm going to show you just, if you go to this link, it comes up with, you can see, I'm just going to close this in. All the different states. And so if you go to New South Wales, and I'll do Queensland too, because I know there's a Queensland, at least one on here. So they're all the different organisations that are funded to support you. So we're at right at the bottom. And your peak body as well. So in Queensland, what have we got around Bundaberg? We've got Cairns, Brisbane, Miami, Logan Lee, I don't know, Maroochydore. That's probably, oh, there's Bundaberg. You've got your own Wide Bay volunteers. Okay, so I'm hoping, Stephen, you're contacting them. So I'll just go back to the PowerPoint. And I've done that, so I'm just moving on here. So we just want to, because this is for the Be Connected program, which is about using volunteer digital mentors, we thought we should tell you a little bit about the specific attributes that you should be looking for in digital mentors. So these attributes should make up your basis of a job description. And the problem is that some potential volunteers, as I've already mentioned, fear they lack the necessary tech expertise for digital mentoring. So it's important to tell them they don't have to have an IT background or have any technical knowledge. You only need basic digital literacy. And in fact, IT people are not the right people. They're never patient enough. Well, they're rarely patient enough, I should say, because that's not always true. Like, we've got a student at the moment from Western Sydney University doing his placement here. And he's actually a really good digital mentor as well. He's digitally mentored me. And he writes out instructions for me. I just love it. I love learning new things all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely helpful. And for more information, we recommend that you watch the webinar Being a Digital Mentor to understand the requirements of the role. We also have another webinar that we recommend, Harnessing Volunteer Motivation. So that one, did we say something?
Yeah, Stephen, he's telling me yes. I was hoping you would, Stephen. Thank you. That's who got him onto the expo. So it must be a volunteer expo then, maybe a volunteering expo, so you can promote your service. Maybe. I'm just guessing. Yes, it is. Yes. Thanks, Stephen. Great. Well, good luck with that. And, you know, we'd love to hear through Hello at Leap how you go with getting volunteers. I organised an expo with a whole group. We set up a Sydney volunteer network, and I wanted 40 services, and I wanted 500 people to attend. And we got to 39 services, and we gave out, I think, just under 500 show bags. And the feedback was that the conversion rate was very high for volunteerism from all the organisations there. I can't remember for us personally how many we got, but that was a long time ago. But we also got all the local schools, well, it took a lot of effort, but we got the local schools to provide music all through the day too, which I love that synchronicity of having them volunteering as well as part of recruiting volunteers. And it was so entertaining. It was such a fun day. So,
and we're coming towards the end of the webinar, so if you have some questions, we'd love for you to write in now so we can answer them.
See that. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about, these are two particular e-newsletters that could be useful for you if you're not already a subscriber. One is digital inclusion, and that is going to keep you, I should say also, anything if you're not for profit, you can send us anything you want to promote through, if it's relevant for any one of our newsletters, and we'll do it for free. So if you're setting up a digital mentoring program and you'd like to tell us about it and we can share it with the rest of Australia, then please send it through. So you just go to communitynet.ngo, and on the first page, it's not showing here, is a subscribe button. You click on that, or there's this, so I can't remember if it says submit or something, or there's something.
Submit content.
So the digital inclusion is keeping everyone informed about what's happening in that space, new programs being established. We love to have little stories about learners and mentors to inspire others. The volunteering opportunity, volunteering e-news is about sharing more about what's happening in the sector around volunteerism. And we also have another one called Volunteer Opportunities, where you can advertise your role. So all of those people on here who are from Sydney, you would meet your target group in here, and we often get people applying to us through seeing the ad on CommunityNet, or their mother sees it and they refer to their child or something.
Yeah. So again, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. And I'd just like to recap. So today we've covered a variety of recruitment methods, as well as how to engage with people in your community. And the most important take-home message today is be prepared to ask people to volunteer. And we hope you've found the answers to your challenges, but if you haven't, please let us know through our survey, which you'll receive later today, or you can write to us at hello@leep.ngo.
The survey, by the way, is extremely brief, so please take the time to respond to it. It will take you no longer than 2 minutes, unless you're, no, it won't.
No, there's a few questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's no questions coming in, so I'm assuming that you're all feeling
more confident with it, or already confident with asking people to volunteer.
Thank you very much for joining us for this webinar today. It has been a pleasure for Tarun and I'm sure, to share this with you, and as it might be our last one, we'll be sad to say goodbye.
Yeah, and someone says, thank you. Yep, I'm glad that it helped and I have plans. Thank you, great. Thank you for joining us.